relationship of students and pupils to the digitalized education, and there were quite interesting results. And he also underlined the inequalities that are basically then exacerbated by the digital divide that he sees coming up, at least in some schools. So and there are so many other topics related to this kind of a digital turn, but as Barda has also some empirical insights to share with us in relation to the first two topics of the first two webinars. And I'm quite sure at the Reinvest College, you probably also diverted all your operations to the digital and to the Zoom realm. It will be interesting to see and to hear what are your experiences so far. And we hope that Sead Turčula from the Faculty of Political Sciences in Sarajevo, the Dean, they also changed a lot in the way how they were conducting the teaching. And I hope he's going to join us and we can get some additional insights from Sarajevo. But for now, I would like to give you the Zoom, Barda, to share some insights with us. And as we are today a smaller group, before we go to the second topic, I believe it will be very nice just that we make a quick short round and see what our experiences were so far with digitalized teaching. And I told you, I mean, my two kids keep popping up in my lessons at the University of Vienna, which amuses the students, but not I mean, it's not amusing myself too much. So basically, we could also do this smaller round. So Barda, I will just give the Zoom to you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Well, on the reflection thing about the two previous session, I couldn't manage to join you in the first session, but I listened to it online, and I would just give this note as far as the communication between communities, especially in Kosovo, is concerned. We live in a divided society where children from ethnic groups like Albanian and Serb maybe didn't even met each other. It's only few, let's say, activities organized by youth, by NGOs that gather people in maybe short terms, activities. But I have 3 kids, and my 3 kids, and my oldest son is 21-year-old. So they have never met a Serb. And I think that the idea of spaces that was mentioned is very important, because we need to build spaces where people meet regularly and where we can know each other in order to continue with reconciliation. If we keep this kind of divide, we will never understand the real persons, and the idea of the truth is not secure if it's really given only to the curriculum or to the schools, because now we have a lot of information and a lot of books, but we need to have more spaces where there is some critical discussion about issues in a very friendly and secure environment. And I have to say that I don't know any one of you in this group, but I really feel that there's more to do in the academia to discuss about different kinds of issues in education. And I felt that every one of you is critical of education in your own country. And so we share a lot of things. And I basically think that even with this project or similar with FAST, we could do some regional report or project together where we could address some issues in each country with similar methodology and discuss like academicians for different topics in education. So I really feel good being in this group, and I look forward to cooperating with you in the future. Now, as far as the second topic is concerned, my reflection as far as pre-university education is concerned, because last session we discussed more about that level. Well, I agree with everyone that our space at home was a mingle of work, of school, of home, and it was a really big challenge. Just to show you right now, for example, my daughter and I are sharing the same space, and she's doing her homework online, and I'm doing my presentation online. So for many people who, for example, share these kind of spaces, it was very big challenge to really have each other, have the space to be comfortable. Uh, for as far as the online learning at university level is concerned, now I think you mentioned some empirical studies. Sorry for in Kosovo there were some studies. UNDP had just published first impact study on COVID, and there are questions about education. They also published the public polls, which also covers some issues about online learning. And the report I mentioned yesterday, I don't know if it's in English, I read it in Albanian. It's published by FAS in Pristina, and it covers only the families in social assistance. So how did they participate in online learning? And according to that report, only 50% of children of family with assistance have followed online learning. And the main problems with online learning, of course, was lack of equipment and lack of internet access. As far as universities are concerned in Kosovo, there was not such a big challenge in terms of going online. I mean, going online, just using the tools to get some lectures online. And at Reinvest, we did the testing 1 week before we went online. So we were using a Moodle platform in the past just to put lectures and to do quizzes and to submit assignments. And so when we read the news and saw what other universities are doing, because at Reinvest we also have a program which is from University of London and London School of Economics. So we were gathering information that we will, even with those programs, we will go online. So we did the preparation, and we, from the first day that we were out of our premises, we went online. And we were using the platforms Google Meet, Zoom, WebEx, and others that were available to us. And within 1 week or two, all other higher education institutions also went online. However, the emergency of going online overlooked some of the other issues that are related to teaching and learning, because in most of the cases, teaching online was just hooking in the platform like Zoom or Google Meet and giving your lectures online. At Reinvest, we analyzed each module to see whether we can change the methods of evaluation, because we knew that there are not going to be exams, especially for April. We had some April exams. So we had to see what kind of activities you do physically, like tutorials or exercises, and how can you switch them online in terms of engaging students. So I would say that the difficult part was to design activities that will engage students online, because just physically being present in an online meeting, which is like this one, doesn't really ensure that you will engage, especially when you have to, let's say, do a discussion or ask students questions. And so you as a teacher have to manage everything, like the microphones and all other difficulties that were posed. Another problem was you cannot replace that kind of interactivity that is happening in class, especially when you explain difficult concepts or you want students to discuss a case study or do some exercises. There were especially problems with statistics, mathematics, and programming. So teachers also, were facing the problem because if they would share screen their computer and will ask students to do all the programming things. So it was very um, uh, distracting to move between screens, and especially in home environment where not all students had, as I said, the commodity as you have in the classroom. Um, so this was also one of the main problems, how to share screen and use the tools in order for teachers to write in their screens. That was especially important for maths. So our IT department solved this problem by giving our teachers some extra equipment and tutorials how to do that with maybe other, I don't know exactly the names of the programs, but they were using 2 to 3 programs depending on the level of teacher IT abilities, so that they can use from simple programs to more difficult programs as they needed them. And the third most important challenge was exams. So the challenge was how to ensure an online exam, which at the same time has criteria for credibility, so that we don't have any kind of misconduct. And in terms of papers, where students had to deliver papers, that was a solved problem because we already had students delivering papers online. But in terms of exams, well, we tested. At the first stage, we tested some of the exams, and we have found some problems in some glitches in the system or similar things. And then learning from those problems, we designed the exams. Now we are doing exams physically, because there were some subjects where teachers suggested that they were not able to do the exam online. And because this was argued, we arranged space which meets health recommendations to hold the exam. From 1st of June, our government allowed universities to hold exams online. In our international programs, as I mentioned, in the past, these programs would be administered in some testing center approved by University of London and London School of Economics. And then the test would be sent to them via post. Now they had also an online system, which was for us a very let's say a big challenge, because we had to resolve all the technicalities and all the things that were not like we were not familiar with. But I would say that these institutions are very serious institutions, and they had like long and very detailed instructions how to prepare those exams online. So our students had some time, like Before they would have 3 hours for sitting an exam, and now they would have extended time, and they are open book exams. So they would have more time to do the exam online with some specific conditions that are in the system that they use. So for us, of course, this was something new and very difficult to manage, but we did it. So the first exam was, I think, yesterday, and there were some problems, but now I think that from the second exam and onwards, there will be no such problems. Uh, and the fourth issue, maybe that comes from the student side, because I was talking more about problems from the institutional side, is that students also lack the interaction between themselves, studying in groups, and also not knowing exactly when there is this, if they have the time or the ability to contact the professor all the time if they have some problems. Because at Reinvest we use the open policy, let's say contact policy, and students were very free to come in our offices and to schedule a meeting. And so this kind of distance, social distance, was really, really hard on students. And we don't know yet, because now we are in the exam period, and we don't know yet the effects of the pandemic, both on student preparation, but also on exam taking and also results. So if you have any more questions, because I don't know exactly what to uh, to mention, but this is the experience we had.
Thank you, Bada, so much. I mean, what you just told us and explained and described is basically a full range of both challenges, but also opportunities. Mentioning as when we just mentioned the exams and the open questions that are still up there. It means that we are still in the middle of this kind of a period of adjustment and testing, trying to establish a kind of a proper knowledge on what effects the digital education is going to have, how is it going to unfold, is it going to stay, and in which form with us, which is also the experience from the University of Vienna. I mean, when the Corona crisis came and the semester at the University of Vienna starts at the beginning of March, so basically the first week of the semester is the first week of March, and that was precisely 1 week before the Austrians closed and introduced the restriction measures. From one moment to another, all the possible challenges for the teachers also and for the students, for the teachers basically, they all prepared the courses and the lessons in a kind of a normal, usual way, and they needed to switch to digital within basically few days, which is both from didactical but also technical and all possible other points of view a huge challenge. Some managed quite well, some overdid it. I mean, like younger colleagues younger colleagues simply or digital natives that in the meantime are also teaching at the university, they some of them overdid it. That was at least a feedback that I got from my students. While at the same time, a bit older colleagues that are still from the analog time, they adjusted a bit not at that pace. So there were huge challenges. But then also on the side of the students, and then just to tell you my experience, in one of the seminars, I have 38 of them teaching the class on authoritarianism. And my experience was basically that at least 10 got lost on the way from the beginning of the semester until now, due to all possible reasons, basically restrictions, the taking care of the families, taking care of relatives, etc., etc. So basically, this is where then the issue of inequalities or possible social economic precarity that we have at the University of Vienna too comes into the play. So just a few sentences, but Alexander has joined us in the meantime. and I would open up this first round of discussions. I don't believe that Sead Torchula is going to make it. We can try, and thank you, Bada, for the suggestion. We will definitely first of all have a publication out of those three webinars together with the Friedrich Ebert Foundation. And even before we conceptualized the webinar, we were discussing some studies, comprehensive studies on the educational sector, and I believe there will be more coming up. And we will also try to include SEAD. But now we could make a kind of a short first round, because many of you are also teaching or engaged in educational activities. Samir raised the hand. I believe, Alexander, you also were teaching digitally from the very beginning of the corona crisis. So we can make a kind of a quick round before we then come to the second round of inputs by Jacqueline and Marco. So Samir, you wanted to jump in and to share some experience.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not teaching though. However, I wanted to offer this other perspective, more student perspective.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
I'm also a board member of the Western Balkans Alumni Association. That's a regional organization gathering young people from the Western Balkans who have been studying abroad as recipients of various scholarships, and then they decided to return to the Balkans, or sometimes they even stay abroad and work. So basically now we have a lot of students who are currently enrolled in studies coming back to us saying, complaining about their experience being international students. And usually we connect studying abroad as Erasmus students, you know, as on exchanges, you know, as the best time of students' life, you know, where you meet other people, other countries, you know, receive scholarship, learn languages, etc. However, I would say this particular time now that we are in was probably the worst time to be an international student since 1987, for example, since Erasmus Plus program has been established. Why? Because a lot of students, for a lot of them, being abroad as an Erasmus student or exchange student has meant with dealing with a lot of stress. Being sent back home in the middle of semester, not knowing what will happen to your grades, to your exams. You know, if you are, I don't know, 18, 20 years old, you know, for some of them, Erasmus means going abroad for the first time. And for a vast majority of them, including me, when I went to my first Erasmus, it was my first living abroad experience, you know, and that's what shapes us as people later. And then having this kind of a, you know, experience where you don't know what's going to happen next, this uncertainty makes it a nightmare out of this experience. The lectures have been canceled. The travel has been canceled for many of them. Some of them have been traveling back home to the Balkans for like 36 or 48 hours, you know, changing flights, moving from flights to buses, etc. And this is really something that we should also take care on. Also for those young people who have been engaged in traineeships abroad. This has meant either breaking the traineeship. I can speak from my own experience here at the European Parliament. European Commission and the EU Council has totally canceled the new intake of trainees for the October period. Instead, they have just extended the traineeships for the trainees who are currently here now in Brussels. In case of European Parliament, which I'm a trainee of currently, they are currently risking a bit. They did not cancel anything, but they will try to take in new cohort of 200 trainees, which puts them at risk of bringing a new cohort of potential COVID patients, which European Commission and EU Council are afraid of. And I think this is something that young people are currently facing with when it comes to this international education and this sphere, you know, of international exchange of knowledge that we should also take in consideration, because for some of them, 1 year of studying abroad will totally be a failure. That they won't take lessons learned that usually people do take, and I think if you do have international students coming from other countries, I would warmly recommend to contact them basically separately, you know, and asking for help, because what we are getting as a feedback from our own fellow students from the Western Balkans who have been studying abroad, it's not a good situation, and I sincerely hope it will improve as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Samir. I mean, this is a very important perspective, at least. I mean, within the European Union, but also then extending towards all other countries that are participating in the programs. I mean, this Erasmus experience that has over the two last decades, or 2 to 3 last decades.
Three last decades. 2 years ago, three years ago, it was 30 years of Erasmus.
But I mean, when I was studying in the previous century, I mean, it was probably like, it will be like 10% of the students going to this exotic Erasmus exchanges, and now it's like 80% almost. And this is a formative experience for so many young students, not only in terms of learning, but in coming to different countries, contexts, learning themselves, but also other societies, etc., etc. And they usually profit a lot. And now, I mean, what we have experienced so far at the University of Vienna, it's precisely the fact that you just described. International students, I mean, even though they are included into the online learning, they simply make only a limited experience and are struggling a lot. This will be a kind of Erasmus lost generation to a certain degree, and they will probably need to take care of it. Before we continue, I would like to give the Zoom to Emma also. Emma Smolar, she is enrolled in the master's education at the University of Sarajevo, Faculty of Political Sciences. There's Sead. I mean, Sead is standing on the other side. He is the dean and he is teaching, and Emma is on this side. On the side of the students, and the University of Sarajevo has also introduced this online learning. But Emma, it would be amazing if you could would just share a few experiences from your point of view. How was it set up from the very beginning on? What the experiences in the meantime, and how would you, from June's perspective, evaluate what has happened so far at the University of Sarajevo?
Thank you very much for the floor, Vedran. It wasn't initially planned for me to actually give an input, but considering that Sead unfortunately was unable to join us, I think that it's also good to at least have one perspective from the University of Sarajevo, of which the Faculty of Political Sciences that I'm attending is only a part of. I graduated the bachelor's program in International Relations and Diplomacy as a full-time student, but now because I'm actually part of the FES SOE team as the communications officer, I had to switch to part-time. But I'm also at the same time very much in touch with my colleagues who are full-time students and that have been experiencing this crisis much more deeply, because for me as a part-time student, my obligations towards like the classes and everything are already to a reduced schedule. And this difference between part-time students and full-time students was also very visible in the approach of the administrations to the actual online courses. The good thing and the great advantage that the Faculty of Political Sciences has had is that the curriculum has already had a part of the courses online. So from the beginning of my master's program, a part of the syllabi was for each of the professors to have part of their classes online. The website of the faculty has had this e-platform where professors can post fora, they can post questions, they can post assignments, whatever they find is necessary or fits their own schedule. Some of the professors were very diligent in using this, others were not. But when faced with this crisis, everybody was kind of mandatory to start using this. Therefore, the administration has actually built from scratch a new platform, and everything happened so fast. Like we had this entire digital update go through our system, and the students were actually joking around that the e-platform that we had previously finally got its purpose. So that part in itself wasn't anything new to the students. It wasn't something that we weren't expecting, but the differences in terms of how teachers approached this remained, because some of them were previously not engaging very much through this online, and we kind of have gotten the feeling that they remained sort of not really fond of this online digital way of teaching. Again, advantages were that majority of the classes were handled in limited capacities with reduced topics, but the teachers and the students were communicating. The administration was very much involved. They asked for students' evaluations and opinions, which was also great. It showed us that people are actually caring about our experiences and how we are, do we have any difficulties? How are we handling this new platform? How are we handling our schedules? And from that point of like administrations and students, it was handled very much empathetically. But individually, a lot of teachers had different approaches, which was what created the majority of the stress for the students. With some of the professors, it was a no-brainer. It was a piece of cake. Everything was handled perfectly. And I feel that the students didn't miss out on much, despite the fact that we were not seeing each other in person, because we are already used to a part of our students' lives going online. For example, from the very beginning of my studies, students handle all of their coordination through private Facebook groups. So everything in terms of student communication was already online. The only problem was this part of adapting the people who were kind of inert to this online teaching to actually start using it more. And the second problem, which was the biggest problem overall, was something that Barda already mentioned. It was the exams, the validity and the credibility of the grades that we get through online exams. Majority of our exams as political science students are handled through essay questions, through open book exams. And that way it was very difficult to actually push students to learn diligently and not to have like a Wikipedia page open during their exam in a side tab. And teachers had a very much difficulty establishing whether or not this was happening. So it created a bit of tension and distrust between teachers and students. Of course, those already students who are diligent, who are doing their work as properly and as best as they can. But this environment of not knowing what was going on, and that was also bolstered by the stress of the overall situation, created this kind of tension and distrust, and the overall atmosphere wasn't as fruitful as it may have been had we had more transparency and more ways to supervise and monitor how the actual exams were going through. Fortunately, the situation has calmed down, and the University of Sarajevo, which is kind of the normative superpositions body to the Faculty of Political Sciences, had made the decision to actually be able to host and hold exams in person, in classes, with, of course, certain measures that were health-related precautions that need to be taken into consideration. And students were ecstatic about this because the teachers that they had problems with communicating and establishing kind of smooth procedures over exams could actually move these exams to classrooms. And for the majority of the final exams, from what I'm seeing from my like notifications that I get via email from the faculty, majority of the exams will be actually held in person. But also some of them that were already successfully held, like midterms that were successfully held online, they will remain online for the rest of the academic year. And that's last but not least, and I will kind of stop at that, for me as a part-time student, not only was the group of part-time students kind of left aside, we were also kind of left in dark because the administrations and the teachers had a lot of trouble adapting everything to this new reality, that they kind of, at least I have received the feeling that they forgot that they have an entire group of students that are not there regularly, that are not there full time. So it took a big while for us to get any contact from the administration, from the teachers, to kind of receive information on what is going on. We kind of had the feeling that we had to figure out everything on our own. And being being part-time students, we kind of did not have neither the time nor the coordination that the full-time students had to kind of get this moving and get this forward. So it's now is a situation of catching loose ends, and that's what creates additional frustration for us. But again, I'm hoping that it will get sorted out very fast and very quickly, because at least the administration is listening to us, and we had this open door to appeal if we have any concerns or opinions or thoughts, and that kind of open communication is what we deem the most valuable in a situation like this. So I will kind of leave it at that, because I don't want to hold up any more time.
Thank you so much, Emma. I mean, what happened just right now in this very small round is a very interesting reflection from two sides, from the side of those that are teaching and students on the other side. And this is, for example, what I was missing all the time of the Corona crisis at the University of Vienna. I would use my Zoom times and the virtual meetings to discuss with students the challenges that they have, to get feedback, to ask them as what they think about how I am performing in this digital learning. But there was basically not an organized forum for us to exchange between each other and just to see where the challenges are, and to, as you put it, Emma, to catch loose ends. So this, I mean, this remains a kind of a challenge. And then a second question that just popped up in my mind while you were speaking, Emma, speaking about adjusting and trying to catch loose ends. I mean, the question is what is going to happen from September onwards. I mean, and this is a kind of a huge discussion field that we will probably pick up on as we continue. So now I would suggest, I mean, I would also like to hear Alexander's experiences from Belgrade quickly, and then go to Jacqueline and Marco, and then we can have a kind of a common final round of discussion. So Alexander, what's your experience so far, and how?
Before I start to share my experience, I would like really to pinpoint what Samir said. So I think that we really need to pay attention on students who were abroad on different kind of exchanges, because something that is really like formative experience turned out to become something like very difficult, and nobody take care about them. And maybe, of course, in Serbia, we had specific troubles because all these people who came back to Serbia because of different reasons, either they were seasonal workers or students, they were framed by the government as people who are putting in danger whole society and state. So, but on the other side, I think that we should also, in that respect, shed light on positive cases. I am not quite familiar with details, but it seems to me that Portugal had done a very good job, because from the first day they make some kind of government decision that all people who are in Portugal have the same rights in terms of the health system and everything, like all other citizens. So that's I don't know details. So how it was worked, if it really turned out to become positive experience for all these people who found themselves in Portugal. But it seems to me that it suggests that this country take another approach than the most other countries. At my faculty, so I'm working at the Department of Psychology at the University of Belgrade. So it was really interesting time. So like Vedran, like you said, so we found ourselves suddenly in this challenging situation. Before that, minority of teachers used Moodle, mostly Moodle. Some of them used also other platforms as well, but mostly Moodle. And Moodle, it was, but again, minority. When we moved to the digital teaching, so the most colleagues at least put effort to include Moodle platform in their teaching. So, and that was really positive, because without that, I could imagine as a head of department, if I would approach to someone suggesting, oh, please, can you just include some Moodle activities in your course? So probably most colleagues would say, but I don't see any reason for that. We are meeting every week, we are working in that way, so this is the best way what we can do. I don't believe that we can do something interesting by Moodle, and probably nothing would happen. But now this whole situation make a sense to those colleagues to try out Moodle. And I see that as a positive effect of this situation, because many of them had a reason to try out Moodle, to try out something because they didn't have any other alternative. And of course, many of them try it in different ways. Some of them overdoing, like you said, Vedran, or some of them do it that at really very superficial level. But when we made some kind of like survey with colleagues and students, we found out that the most colleagues really made an effort to keep the substance of their courses. So they sacrificed some parts of the curriculum, which is really not like crucial, but they had the feeling at the end of this period that they realized the most important part of courses. We had only one course that was not delivered through the digital platform, and not because these colleagues didn't use, but because of the nature of the course. So it was about academic skills, like presentation skills. And they said, okay, we can organize that through the Zoom, like the students present their papers and work over Zoom. But still, they said, we believe that the important part of the course is that student who is presenting sitting in the front of other students and teachers and have this kind of interaction. So after at the end of the semester, when we had a little bit more relaxation of the measures, they organized some kind of catch-up week with students, and that was like positive experience. Also on the side of the students, although I must say that we are very selective as a department. So we have every year up to 500 candidates for almost 90 places. So probably we are really not representative. So our students didn't have any problems, except students who had, like Vedran, you suggested, some difficulties in their private lives. So otherwise, we didn't have troubles that students were not able to use digital platforms. All in all, it seems to me that colleagues and students, they had positive experience, of course, in spite of the whole context. And through the informal conversation with my colleagues, it seems to me that even those who didn't use digital tools before, they are nowadays much more enthusiastic. And many of them told me that next year, even if we would have like a regular situation, they are going to include digital tools in their teaching. So myself, I will do some classes, especially when we come to some kind of holidays, because when it comes to the holidays, some students are traveling back to home, or they're trying to extend their visit to home. So I'm planning it now that these lectures, when they are like either just before the holiday or after the holiday, to transform to the Zoom, in order to enable them to maybe take some days more at home. And the most important, like Barda explained, in our case, the most challenging part was online exams, partially because of structural reasons. So our university is, in that respect, very traditional, and long time ago, they adopted the rule book that exams need to happen physically in the building of the faculty. So of course, in that time, it was probably reasonable. We should not blame those people who made this decision. We could understand from that perspective that this is reasonable choice. Although with the Erasmus exchange and everything, it's a little bit pointless, but okay, so let's this part. But nowadays exams, even if this is meaningful, that was the biggest problem. And because of that, nowadays for June and July, we are going to have like exams, traditional exams in the building of the faculty, and we are trying to extend it both in the terms of time and space. So now we are using for the same exam double space, double number of rooms, and instead of 2 weeks for exam term, we have 4 weeks. So it means that we are going to extend exam period till the end of the July. But of course, I think that but we are turning blind eye on that. I think still some colleagues organized online exams. So please delete that from the Facebook Live. But if everything is fine, so nobody complains, so I think that even this kind of small mischiefs will be a source for the future innovations. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. I mean, this is a nice metaphor for basically what's happening, not only in terms of education, but in so many other fields. Basically, just you now explaining that there is a kind of a regulation that you have to do the exams in the physical building in a moment where we shift so much and the whole societies are changing. That's just a reminder of a previous time. And as you said, as it seems that even those small reminders are going to be altered and adjusted in the times to come with different consequences. Okay, I would suggest now to go to Jacqueline and Marco to have their inputs, and then we can round it up and see. Dafina left, but she wrote me that it might be that she will manage to come back. If she manages to come back, it will be interesting to hear all the experiences from Albania and from her point of view. But otherwise, let's go to Jacqueline
Thank you.
First, and then to Marco.
You hear me well, right? Okay. I'll talk mostly from the perspective of NGO and mostly related to pre-university education, which I think will be good contribution since we talked a lot about university education. No matter, we will come back to COVID, of course, but first it's important for me, when we say digital education, what do we think exactly? And it's probably some first preconditions, which are, for example, a unified education information system, competencies digital of teachers, and probably digital material that is used. And when it's talking about Serbia, I have to share that, the situation is not perfect, but I think that institutions are putting a lot of effort, especially in the last several years, to improve the situation. So I think over decade, we are talking about this information system that is not just for following educational path of the student, but also, when he comes to the labor market, what happens, to connect different intersectors, different sectors through that. But still, we don't have that in place. We hope that like in this year, maybe because of Corona, maybe next year, we will have this unified information system, which will be, of course, a great opportunity also for researchers. Because nowadays, statistics are different, data that's collected by different institutions are using also different methodology. And it's really hard sometimes to get some information from education system, especially when it's related to economy, and to try to see some economic parameters. When we are talking about competencies, digital competencies of teachers, also, as I know, many, like thousands of teachers pass through different trainings, but this Corona was kind of test, probation, how it looked like, and now I will talk also for the perspective of the parents. I mean, it was great, the system was mobilized, that, for example, for primary schools, and also for secondary schools, there was broadcasted lessons, but at some point, my kids asked me, Mom, do I have to watch this? This is a little bit boring. So it was like, no, you don't have, because also through the Viber, we are getting homework every day. And, I also had to play this teacher role. And it was, for me, it was really, really demanding, not to mention photographing, resizing, sending. And one of the challenge, like we can also now come to, it's kind of this how to say, formative assessment, because, for example, I noticed the mistakes. I hope that the teacher is not listening to this. I don't expect her. I noticed the mistakes in the homework, but I didn't want to react to see, will we receive any kind of feedback? And it came only once, and I can say like 7, 8 times it happened. So maybe it was because, the teacher probably know that parents are overwhelmed with, working from home and teaching kids, but it was like no feedback. And it was, this is one of the although digital education can be, a great opportunity, but this kind of feedback, this is something that, and you talked about exams actually in the higher education, but this is something that is a huge, huge challenge. I would like to come back to what Boris said last time, and I really like that, that the COVID situation actually puts, how to say, even bigger inequalities when we are talking not to minorities, not to this or that group, but generally when we are talking about children that come from poor families, families with low socioeconomic status, and now they were even in the worst position. We have data as Center for Education. We work with many schools, and with 20 schools, 10 primary and 10 secondary schools, we were in very intense communication during COVID, and they reported that even 6% of the students average in 10 primary schools didn't have access to internet or to TV. And for more than half of them, teachers managed to provide paper material. But still, this small percentage, let's say 2% of students didn't even, they couldn't be reached due to different reasons. It can be also, prolonged absenteeism or a seasonal moving of the families, no matter of Corona. In secondary schools, the situation was a little bit better. It was the last percentage of students who didn't have access. But you also know that, if you reach the secondary education, that you're probably not this most vulnerable group. So maybe to this equipment problem, like the tablets and this kind of stuff. And now I'm talking more about challenges, like to digitalize the education, like equipment problem, access to internet. Teachers reported also, and this is interesting when talking about potentials, that some shy students especially, they became more active in online distance learning. That also shows us that the schools current are pretty much rigid and not so creative, and this way was better, for motivation of some students. But is also the big challenge, and that is not. I'm not very much into the topic, but it's cyber bullying, cyber criminal, then data protection. I'm not sure that we as the region, or at least Serbia, is ready, completely to tackle these problems. So I don't know, maybe I will stop now, and then we can have discussion and maybe exchange other data.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And that's very important to introduce this kind of all questions related to different other types of education. We were focusing quite a lot on the higher education in the first round, but what Boris started last time and you picked up now is probably one of the very crucial segments. I mean, maybe we don't even speak about elementary school education and kindergartens, which is, for example, as I have one kid in a kindergarten, the second one just started the school, and she's in the first class, and then in the middle of the first class experience, which is also formative and important, Corona came, and they also adjusted. But here we have a full range of difficulties, and as we can say in general that the COVID situation in terms of socioeconomic developments in the Western Balkans or in Southeastern Europe is going basically to amplify all the problems and that we have in terms of minorities, ethnic minorities, cultural minorities, people living in poverty, whose number is going to explode probably when we just look at the economic figures and the forecast for 2020. There will be a loss of GDP in average between 5 to 10% in the region. The number of unemployed is going to skyrocket, similar to the post global financial crisis period. So basically, what we are going to see are huge socioeconomic problems and challenges and deepened inequalities, which is very much also reflected then in the elementary education or secondary education in the schools. And this will be probably one of the biggest challenges that we will need to face. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Let's go to Marco from Zagreb.
Okay, so good morning to you all. So basically what I was thinking and talking about today is actually two main aspects. So one is actually my experience of teaching at, unfortunately, I don't teach anymore at high school, I teach at university, so I'm going to focus in university. And the other thing is that in the last two sessions, perhaps we focused a bit too much on challenges and issues. So I would like to perhaps give some positive side of online teaching and what can it bring, you know, to this educational system and such. So starting from my own personal experience, so I have to say that I'm quite disappointed by my performance this year and actually the class that I had, because for the first time I had like a new class. I had the pedagogy of youth work, which was very, very, very interactive. At least I thought it would be interactive. It was imagined, you know, just to combine formal and non-formal education with lots of workshops, lots of, you know, cooperation between communities, civil society organizations and other organizations that provide youth work or are in this space of youth work. So, you know, when I was creating this syllabus, I was, you know, very, very, very keen on, you know, just providing lots of stuff that perhaps cannot be seen so easily at universities in the Western Balkans. Unfortunately, I ended up with a very classical class, you know, where I had to teach, you know, without so much, you know, interaction, without workshops, without actually focusing on skills and attitudes and much more on knowledge. And this is something that I genuinely despise. You know, I really, truly believe that one of the biggest problems in the Western Balkan is basically the focus on knowledge and not necessarily on the competences as a whole functional unit. So basically, I had problems with activity at class because, you know, when we started this academic year, I had 2 offline meetings or 2 offline classes and all of them online. And this generation is relatively, you know, not, I would say, passive, not so interested, not so active. So, you know, we started, you know, in the first two classes building up, you know, the culture of participation and activism, because I mean, the whole class is about youth activism per se. And then Corona happened and we had to, you know, switch to online. And, you know, it was so incredibly difficult to facilitate and to provoke them, you know, just to be active in Zoom. I mean, teaching via Zoom is, from my point of view, incredibly tiring. You know, after 1 hour of, you know, having classes Zoom, I feel like as having, you know, 3 classes offline. I don't know why is that so. I don't know whether this is something that you all are facing with, but from my point of view, it was very, very tiring, especially because, you know, you don't have, you know, the eye-to-eye contact, or you don't have face-to-face, to be more precise, contact. You can see the mimics and gestures, you know, of the students, and it's difficult, you know, to recognize if you're boring, if you're going too slow, if you're going too fast, and so on and so forth. This was the one aspect. The other aspect is that, you know, I had to lower my standards, definitely. So I needed to cut for 30% the coursework because it was simply too demanding, you know, to have to deliver this content online. And also, I mean, the students were so not good. I mean, physically, mentally not so good. I would like to remind you that Croatia, actually Zagreb and some other areas of Croatia faced the earthquake also. So in addition to coronavirus, we had this huge problem. So the students and we also as their teachers, you know, we faced the existential crisis that was much more important than, you know, learning about the relationship between young people and youth worker. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this is not the most important thing in the world when, you know, your home is being torn apart by the strong forces of nature, or virus is tearing apart not only health but social tissue. Therefore, I decided that, you know, that it's not the most important stuff, you know, just to cover everything that I imagined that we need to cover, and that we're gonna just focus on the most important stuff, you know. Therefore, I mean, my classes weren't lasting for more than 1 hour. I merged seminars and lectures in one, you know, and trying to just to discuss in order to for them just to get the idea or the glimpse of what youth and youth activism is as such. And unfortunately, I don't know how this went. I mean, I was constantly asking them, what do they need? Is it too difficult? How the other colleagues are doing that? Do they need anything else? We will see next Monday, because then I'm going to have, like, for the first time, like online the exams. And yeah, so I can tell you on Monday how this all went. So this was the personal stuff, you know. So I wasn't satisfied, because, you know, when this started, they started, you know, reading the whole materials of online teaching, and there are like zillion of papers, articles, you know, claiming you should do this, you should do that, and then afterwards, you know, I read all of that, and then I forget, you know, the day after what I'm supposed to be doing. Therefore, I mean, I really honestly hope that we will never ever have this exclusively online classes anymore, because this is not something that for my class and for my, you know, personality is suggested. So this was the one aspect, and the other aspect, and I'm going to finish that, is about the positive stuff of the online teaching, not necessarily only in academia, but also in secondary education. As you know, in the Institute of Social Research, so Boris and Rinka, they did the research on online teaching, and I was, you know, just checking all the Facebook groups, all the discussions that teachers have been, you know, writing their frustrations or their actually positive stuff about online teaching, and I could perhaps, you know, list some of the things that could be, you know, beneficial for the future development of education. First of all, I would like to say that this opportunity, this whole opportunity with coronavirus or corona crisis, basically could lead to the switch or the shift of the focus to the student well-being. I think that we, to some extent, have forgotten about this part of education. You know, we focused on, you know, acquiring knowledge, perhaps skills, or a little bit more attitudes, but we are not so much focused, or haven't been focused as much as on well-being. Teachers, especially in Croatia, basically, if judged by their discussions in Facebook groups and some online forums, basically they say that now they see that they have to, you know, invest much more emphasis and much more effort in supporting student mental health and well-being per se. So from my point of view, if this happens, this would be a great deal, you know, not only in the Western Balkans, but throughout the whole world. Then I believe that, and this is something that is personally, I feel that this is very important, that the general opinion, or the general the general opinion on teachers has changed, because parents and the general public basically have more gratitude towards teachers. Now, when parents have stayed with their pupils or their children at home, and they see that they have to deal with them for 8 hours, you know, not being, and at the same time juggling between, you know, family life, personal life, job, and homeschooling kids. Now they see actually that teachers really do a great deal for them as such, not only for their children. So I think that there is a shift also in actually the opinion or in the gratitude towards teachers. And we have to be aware, the third thing is that I believe that this emergency remote teaching, which is a concept that is commonly used in the educational science for, you know, this kind of education, that this basically have proven that students and faculties are resilient and resourceful, because it was incredibly difficult, you know, to change everything that you know, everything that you do for quite some time, you know, and just to put everything online. I think that we should applaud to all the teachers that have started, you know, doing this online, especially those of eldering. Because I mean, I can say for Croatia, but also I've been doing, you know, a little bit of comparative teacher policies in the region, and I can say that all the education that agencies and other, you know, institutions, civil society organizations excluded, are offering to teachers basically do not offer the concrete methods of how to do online. If they have classes about teaching online, they just provide, okay, so this is Mentimeter, this is Padlet, this is it can do this, it can do that, but they do not give you actually the real tools, you know. So professional teaching, professional teaching education, or after primary education of teachers, basically in the region, is not adequate for actually for having digital education exclusively. So I'm going to stop here. I know that I tackle a lot of it, but we can discuss later on if you want. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Marco. I mean, a few new insights and this kind of a huge question, basically how to equip us all, not only in terms of using digital tools, but basically creating a kind of a new mentality and new sphere of mutually teaching, communicating, and moving forward in a way that all segments of whatever education we have and can have the feeling that this is basically something that makes sense. Now, in the meantime, Dafina from Tirana has joined us again. Dafina, we were having a kind of a round of sharing experiences from our perspective on digital learning, doing education, but also digital ways of being or being engaged in let's say in non-governmental organizations, which is the field where you invest so much time. And as you are, I mean, you gave us the input last time, and you are with the Albanian Youth Congress. You are in touch with many youngsters and young people. If you could just briefly give us a few sentences from your point of view, basically, how are the youngsters, how is the young generation coping? And as I expect that many are telling you and telling you stories about their experiences, and how is it in the field of the non-governmental youth work?
I would say that I also mentioned it in the previous meeting, that young people are those who have been, let's say, much more relaxed than all the others when it comes to this new momentum of dealing with each other and with politics and whatever, because they are using those tools which they are using in their everyday life. What I think they understood in this case is the fact that these tools can be used much more wisely and do some work and do some studies and praise some important issues. For example, here in Albania, we do have now a huge protest about women's and girls' rights. And they have been using different digital tools to boost that movement, and mostly young people have been engaged there. So I would say that for them, it was not as difficult as it was for the youth workers and teachers to get adopted with these new methods and these new ways. And I would say that it was nice as well, because they felt that they could teach something and they can explain and guide the elder ones in this process, and it was with benefits for both sides. So firstly, when it comes to digital tools, I would suggest a kind of not peer-to-peer learning, but peer-to-non-peer learning, and a kind of process when the younger ones can teach the older ones how to get adopted in this new area. The second thing I would say is the fact that our institutions and educational institutions do have lack of capacities in absorbing these new methods. And I think that it's a momentum to reflect upon it and really to put those digital classes in practice and to gain more digital skills. And thirdly, I would say that for the youth sector, because as you mentioned, I work as a Secretary General at National Youth Congress, and there are 112 youth organizations part of the umbrella, which means a huge work when it comes to activities and trainings that we had foreseen for these 3 months. And in my point of view, this is a personal point of view, but I also addressed it professionally in our board meetings, is that the meetings like this one, for example, open talks, symposium cafe, small workshops, can be handled via these programs. But when it comes to proper trainings, it's quite difficult, because many of the youngsters do not feel comfortable, for example, to open their cameras, to participate systematically. You have to find different methods and ways to engage them. And if you are not in physical contact, it's very difficult to get their attention. It's very difficult to make them feel comfortable. There are, for example, cases when they are not, they do not prefer to participate by speaking, but they can work on something, they can do something. They do not have this comfortable context via online meetings. So a kind of separation or a kind of analysis, what works and what doesn't, it's important. I mean, we all turned our lives and our professional work via Zoom, via Skype. We try to keep up with that, and I think that everyone deserves a big applause, because we really got adopted very fast and managed to keep things. But on the other hand, we should reflect upon and see what needs to be improved, what kind of extra skills do we need to gain for future situations, similar situations, and what activities do fit on these programs, and how these programs can be improved. Maybe we can send some recommendations to the IT guys as well. So yeah, this is more or less.
Thank you so much, Stefina. I mean, this is that goes for education, to the civil society engaged work, and for so many fields. That's a kind of a period that we are experiencing right now, is a period of huge adaptation. That's a huge leap for all of us, and what we definitely need is probably during the summer, after the summer, to reflect upon what has happened to us. Because probably when you travel, take the time machine and travel to the year 2050 or 2060, the researchers looking back at our time will probably say that was one of the biggest milestones of the humankind in the 21st century. So basically, and education and this kind of how to deal with digital tools and what society is going to emerge out of it will be one of the defining moments of our era. And just, I mean, that was a very interesting suggestion, peer-to-not-peer learning. So basically, we could suggest Friedrich Ebert's Foundation to collect all the old deans from the Western Balkan countries, so they are probably 55 upwards, and let them in the buildings, Alexander, so to stay within the building, let them have lessons by youngsters, 20 to 25 maximum, as in not over 25, just to address, I mean, in order to address one of the fundamental issues that we haven't tackled so far, but the fact that in many cases our education is still authoritarian-like in many variations, basically, and that we haven't moved from this kind of authoritarian type of preaching, almost quite often at universities, towards participatory and learning, or type of learning, or where basically you have free kind of an exchange of opinions. Alexander wanted to add a sentence or two.
Yeah, few things. So first, about this nice fantasy that deans are listening at the lecture from students. I think that it would be even better if the deans would listen teaching of their teachers, just to realize how much it might be boring, like Marco said. I would like just to share experience together with Marco. Yes, this is challenging when you are in the front of Zoom and you don't see faces and you don't have this traditional interaction. Of course, it's really tiring experience. So we are using, I suppose that you already heard about the term Zoomoran. It means, you know, that you're tired of Zoom. So, but on the other side, we need to be aware as a psychologist. There is very important that at the beginning, when you are new in some experience, you are getting focused on the new challenges, and it makes things tiring. But by time, and this is my experience, at the beginning, it was really like that. But then by time you start to lose, it is going in the background. You start to accommodate, to adjust, to get familiar with this situation. Then also students start to learn how to react, and then you have some kind of communication. And I tried use some kind of experimentation. For example, I deliver a lecture through the Zoom in the real time. Then the next time I recorded my lecture together with slides and sent to students in advance. And then when we meet on Zoom, we have discussed about that. So that I tried out different arrangements. And of course, at the moment, I don't have any like recommendations or firm conclusions out of that. But in a way, this is also opportunity for us to experiment and to try to explore different things. But what I would like, the most important reason to take this round is to suggest that maybe our study might be just narratives, to invite teachers and students and just to write narratives like about experience, because this is so fresh and new experience that it would be difficult for everyone, or it would be premature to have questionnaire, to have this kind of approach. I think that one publication with this kind of just narratives, like me in the time of Corona, like I share with you my experience, or Marco said, I am not happy with myself. I think these kind of stories would be really very good starting point for our research.
Thank you so much, Alexander. That's interesting because Friedrich Ebert's Foundation Southeast European Dialogue office in the regional office in Sarajevo, Harun or Emma, you might say one or two words on it. The last publication called Trends, Political Trends, and is that the title of the publication? You basically went this way. Just let people from different fields tell the stories, tell the narratives. So Harun, if you could just say one or two sentences, because this is a very good, basically, tool for just reflecting what's happening around us, to let the people talk, and then we can distill basically the major messages. And then also Jacqueline and Marco wanted to add something, but Harun or Emma.
Yeah, sure. So maybe as some of you know, we have this publication. It's called Political Trends and Dynamics. It's a bi-monthly publication which we cover various political, social, economic topics. And the last one we had the special edition where we, so to say, chose fields or branches where normal people could give their voice and share their experiences on how Corona basically influenced their everyday life, and if what changed, what got different. So basically we choose 6 to 7 branches, from journalism to to teachers, over just usual store workers, and we had I think about 50 or 60 voices. So the publication is on our website. So if you're interested in that, you can of course I can also send it to you, or you can look up for it on our website. But I totally also agree with Alexander. So it will be really interesting to see, just to have these narratives from youth professionals or teachers, professors, and also from the students. So it's always this another side, not just to have opinion and decision makers giving their voice, but also have this other side of people who also really contribute to the society, and also education is a thing that it would always maybe the most important thing for the future of our region in general. So I can send you the publication if you should want to read it. Or
yeah, I mean that will be great, Harun. As when we finish, so you could just send this publication into the broader group of people that were attending different webinars from Monday through Wednesday until today. And just to repeat it again, if you have any studies, any interesting research results, or even opinion papers or reports, it will be great that we share it, as we will then come back to you quite soon with a proposal for publication. We will still discuss it, and we want to take the experience that we have been sharing since Monday towards a kind of a broader public. So now I have Jacqueline, Alexander, and Barda. Jacqueline, would you like to start?
Yeah, I was inspired with what Sasha suggested. I wanted to share that with these Spanish schools that I mentioned some data from, we are actually starting to collect teacher stories, like how my day looked, what I did, what was difficult, what was easy, and stuff like that. So I think it's a great idea because this kind of memory will expire in 3 months' time or 6 months' time when we start some research. I mean, I think this is my last word in this seminar. Just wanted to thank to the organizer. It was a great opportunity to meet, now, especially now since I guess all of us, at least I didn't travel from the February anywhere from Belgrade. So this is kind of virtual traveling to different countries and cities. For some, this is more like idea for some kind of future research that we shouldn't forget about gender. And it's great that Defina mentioned that this women protest in Tirana, I think it's connected to sexual violence, but generally, as domestic work is not visible, the labor of mainly women in our region is in home, it will also happen with this kind of home education and homeschooling. It will be, I mean, it's my guess, it would be great if they can prove that through some research that women again will be burdened with this teaching of children at home. And as the last thing I would like to say that we may need, I mean, it's great that we have here academia and NGOs and different perspectives from different countries. It would be great to involve political parties because, you know, education may be the most important word in our professional life, but it's still not high on the agenda of our countries. And it can happen maybe through, I don't know, educating political parties on education issues and education policy. So this may be some of ideas for Harun to think about past initiatives, and especially not related only to social democratic parties, but to the whole range of parties. Okay, thank you. It was nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Just briefly, Jacqueline, you're completely right. I mean, it is a part of our work to also involve political parties and political representatives. So basically, decision makers in the process. And of course, we also tried this time. Unfortunately, the people we invited weren't available for this session. But I will take it into account. And of course, for our next sessions and you know, coming together, we will surely try to integrate some political representatives. So thank you for the feedback.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Marco. Okay, I saw you raising the hand, but it's fine as a Barda.
Yeah, I would also just I'd like to thank you all for this great opportunity to discuss these issues. And I would really suggest that I like the idea about the narratives. So I'm very interested to participate in that kind of publication. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to engage in regional research about this topic and learn from each other. And the second issue is that maybe it's a good idea also to raise a voice about what are the most important issues about digitalization in education, because politicians always promise different things in elections, and they have narratives about what is important, and this hasn't been one of the priorities. And we know, for example, in Kosovo that there are a lot of investment in infrastructure, even in the infrastructure in education. We have a World Bank project that is going to equip all schools at all levels with internet access. We have a lot of, internet access, but we are not tackling the main problem of what it means to be digitalized. It's not just to have an internet access and a web page. It's about systems and structures and all this for teachers, especially, not just to teach online, but also to develop courses that will be delivered online in terms of, even Moodle is effective if you use it effectively. So we need to have some parameters or indicators to say that this is the minimum that one school needs to have in terms of communication, in terms of systems, in terms of how they communicate lectures, information, and a lot of other issues with parents, with the public, and with students. Because what was very important in this time, although we had schools teaching, via TV broadcast, there was no communication between schools and parents. There was no communication between, in some cases, even between schools and students. So I think this is not what we want in schools. I agree with previous, discussions we had. We need to build communities. And if time changes, that means we just need to change some of the ways we interact in that kind of community. But we need to build strong school communities where we put the perspectives of students, teachers, and parents in. So this is it. Thank you again, and it was a good opportunity.
Thank you so much, Barda. Marco left us. He just told us, this is the part of this Zoomoran or Zoomism. I got to run now as I have another Zoom meeting in 5 minutes. So I just wanted, Fuad, do you want to add anything to the conversation or?
Well, yeah, I just first of all want to thank Harun for inviting me to participate in this webinar. It was really informative since we are a non-governmental organization. All the things that have been said here, we are going to take into account. I will just only like maybe one sentence to add in today's subject of what this coronavirus online activities have brought. Obviously, a lot of new potentials to be discovered, but obviously what is most important in our work as organization dealing with the past subject and basically reconciliation is that lack of physical interaction that is hugely important in our activities. But generally that is something that we obviously have to adapt to. Someone said also generally the way of organizing Zoom activities or online activities are best when it comes to small groups. Obviously there is some additional space for asking questions and discussing, but generally this is something that as educational sector, obviously economics, but also we non-governmental sector have to adapt to. Hopefully these measures epidemiological will get us some results so that we can continue with our normal activities. But so far obviously we have to learn something new each and every day and try to include that in our activities. Anyway, this was really informative, and I'm really glad to have an opportunity to learn something new, and obviously I'm looking forward to future activities of this kind. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Fuad. I see Dafina raising her finger. I don't know if this is the sign that you want to say something or just a kind of reminding us to be courageous or what. Dafina?
I just wanted to say something very shortly. Basically, we were planning with the Western Balkan Youth Cooperation Platform. It's a platform, a gathering of 6 national youth councils in the region, to manage one of the sessions panels in the Bled Strategic Forum, which was foreseen to be held this year, but it's not going to be as it was planned. And the topic was exactly the digital education. And there is a momentum as well from the Regional Cooperation Council for a huge initiative to bring together the ministries dealing with education and create platforms and invest more on this digital education. What I'm trying to say is that taking from a larger scale, there is a momentum to work upon this, and we should definitely have our say there. So I completely agree with Alexander, except the fact that I like his background very much, coming from Harry Potter saga. I agree very much about narratives, because they should come from us, from these kind of people which have been dealing every day with these issues, from teachers, from pedagogical experts, from youth workers, from those which were working in grassroots level, working every day with students, with pupils. They should shape the narratives when it comes then to be translated into programs, projects, or activities. Because if we are not bridging it, then we are going to have some products which were completely unconsulted and maybe not effective at all. So since there is an initiative to invest and to work in this field, then we should be included, and I would be very happy to contribute if there is foreseen something, let's say, in baseline level, to give some thoughts, to build up some narratives, or to bring the opinions of young people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Stefina. Just to try to sum it up quickly. I mean, thanks also Fuad for mentioning the reconciliation and the need for the physical interaction, which reminded us of the debates that we had on Monday. Not all of you were able to join us on Monday, but luckily the Friedrich Ebert Foundation has recorded all of the webinars, the one on Monday on reconciliation and the ethnic narrative, the one on Wednesday on inequalities, and the one today on the digital, new digitalized education. So Emma and Harald, I will also suggest that we, besides collecting studies and research that we all share in one of the next emails, that we also do some kind of a small push to announce to the big world outside that has been waiting for this series of webinars for so long. But not able to be with us. That's something like this happened, and I believe it was really informative. It was rich when you just go from Monday to Wednesday to today. We were quite a small group of people today, but again, there's a very informative, a lot of insights, and I believe there will be, and there are many people, both in the educational sector, but also in the NGO sector, out there interested probably in listening and seeing the videos again. We will come back to you with a few ideas on the publication, how to follow up on what we discussed this week. Thank you also for this input about narratives, and as Harun explained, there is already this sense that we need more narratives to have a kind of full picture, or kind of a very interesting picture of the reality that has been changing recently so intensively and so quickly. So in any case, that's it from my side. Also from the side of Gazela Puda-Drashko, who was not able to be with us today. She moderated and she conceptualized the whole webinar together with Harun, Emma, guys from Sarajevo, and myself. So thank you again. Harun, would you like to have the final concluding words from your side?
Thank you, Vedran. Just briefly, I know everybody's going has to run, so thank you from my side. Also, it was a pleasure of having so much insights and so much expertise on this field. It was a pleasure of hearing your experiences, and of course, we're hoping to hold this group together and maybe even expand it to have more events, webinars, publications on this topic. It's of course, as I mentioned, of huge importance. So thank you for participating in this series of webinars, and we're hoping to see you soon again. And have a nice weekend and week after that.
Bye, guys.
You too.
Bye, guys.
Bye.